So here we are, episode 10 of the Photography Brothers. There was a lot of doubt. When we started out that this podcast wouldn't make it, But here we are, 10th episode, and not only that, first episode with the guest. I'm here. I'm Jared Poirier. I'm your photography brother. We've got Michael Costa. He's your photography brother. And we have a new photography brother to introduce to everybody here. We have my good friend, excellent photographer, Kashif Robinson. How's it going, buddy?
Going good, man. Thanks for having me, guys.
Our very first guest ever, and we really appreciate you being on here, man. And we've got an exciting topic today that's tailored specifically to Cash. Cash does a lot of work with models, and we want to talk a little bit about some of his experience. Before we get to any of that stuff, though, since it is the 10th episode, just have a special 10th episode intro here. A couple really important things. Michael, you started clapping during the last intro. That's never going to work out. It's never going to work out, dude. The syncing will never be right. So you're just going to want to applaud at the end, okay? So we'll just wait till the end.
I thought that was the beauty of it, was it being out of sync was kind of the...
For you, usually I would accept, that extra level, but this one's too good, man. Masha thought of this one, and she's like, you guys gotta do this one. So just please save any applause to the end. Sydney, can we cut the music here? And here we go with the intro. If you want to be my brother, you gotta take good photos. Taking all the photos, it's the Photo Bros.
Wow.
Oh man. You see Cash just like dip out of the Zoom call.
I'm like, man.
Cash has disconnected.
Getting the energy going, man.
Amazing. You're a singer-songwriter, man. Amazing.
Worked hard on it. We worked hard on that one, boys.
Nice.
All right. Now that that's out of the way, we
content.
can quality content. We can get into the serious part of the episode here. So yeah, as I was saying, it's a great opportunity to have you on here, Cash, and we appreciate you taking the time to join your photography brothers here today. The topic that we want to get into essentially is how to work with models, how to make models feel comfortable, and how to get the best possible images when you're working with models. And I think that you're pretty uniquely positioned to address that here, which I'm super excited about. Before we get into that, though, just introduce yourself to the watchers, the listeners out there. Who are you? What do you do? What camera do you use? Stuff like that.
Oh, man. Where do I start? All right. So, I'm Kashif Robinson. You can find me on Instagram at kashif.robinson or Kashif.Robinson for some. I specialize mostly in portraits, kind of like commercial, fine art and lifestyle portraiture. For cameras, honestly, man, I just use whatever I can get my hands on. But for the most part, I'm always on a Canon EOS R.
Nice.
Yep.
We know.
Man.
We know Michael's going to be excited to hear that news.
I think I might have to drop off. I don't know. You would get a Canon guy. It's okay.
You would get a Canon guy. He does also have a Lumix though, right? If that makes you feel any better.
Yeah. The GH5 for video, if I'm doing that, or sparingly sometimes for photo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I gotta say that I love my Canons for both of those, but Lumix is good and Sony's good too. And I don't know if you're one of those weirdos that has like a Fujifilm. You're welcome here as well.
Wow.
We don't try to exclude anybody here. So yeah, I think that's awesome, man, and definitely. you're going to be able to bring some wisdom to bear here on the Photography Brothers. And a lot of the stuff that we do talk about is that sort of field of work, like lifestyle photography, and when you're working with models, working with people. I think maybe a good way to kind of dive into it here, just as I was kind of thinking off the top of my head, one thing we like to do here on Photography Brothers is talk about like the victories and things that we're great at, but I've also found that it's really enlightening to dig into some of the things that we've like had trouble with. So I think that that might be, to bring your experience and to bring some good points out. Maybe that's a good way to approach this. So we'll just start with Michael. Michael, what are some challenges that you've faced when you're out taking lifestyle photos or working with a model?
Just want to start by saying thank you for allowing me to go first.
Oh, you're welcome.
No worries. I think ultimately what I think it comes down to is like the better portrait sessions that I've had have come through just like constant communication with the model, being comfortable, and in turn trying to make the model feel comfortable. Anytime I'd say like some of the more awkward sessions that I've had have probably been near the beginning, like kind of like self-doubt, feeling uncomfortable with myself, that kind of coming through, not communicating, having dialogue and making the model feel comfortable. I think that's been I know you wanted a specific instance, but I think just like that's kind of a trend that kind of stems through more of the negative interactions that I've had. And of course, like, there are instances where it's just, there's just a bad interaction. Maybe the model is in a bad mood. Maybe I'm in a bad mood. But I think it all comes down to just like bringing your best self to your shoot and to try and have fun and try to just stay in a creative place. But yeah, no specific examples.
No, that's perfect, examples. Man. That's good. What are you thinking on? Does that get the gears turning in your head a little bit, Cash, of some ideas around making the model feel comfortable, making yourself feel comfortable as a photographer?
It all just boils down to confidence at the end of the day, because like if you're not confident, especially if you don't really have like an experienced model, they're gonna smell that, they're gonna know that, and they're gonna pick up off and feed off the energy too. So even if you don't know what you're doing, I say just at least act like it. I've been in situations where, I've got a setup that wasn't ideal, whether it be location or outfit was, it's just trash. And, you just got to find some way to make it work. And sometimes you don't really like feel so confident or secure in what's happening with the whole setup, or just like executing overall. When you feel that way and it shows, it's gonna just affect the overall vibe of the shoot. It's gonna show in the work too. But I say whatever you're doing, just try to make the best out of it and have fun with it. For me, like the most challenging situations I come into with stuff like that is kind of just like arranging things from a perspective of having it make sense. Like especially with lifestyle, it's kind of like selling an idea on to people, right? Whether it be through whatever medium, social media in this case mostly. Kind of just like shooting things from a perspective that's aesthetically pleasing or that makes sense, or just kind of have it be functional, where it's showing something off that you're trying to like bring off into the frame. So once you're confident about all that stuff, I would say like whatever challenges you get, it's pretty much like easy to handle it. You just handle it naturally afterwards. It's easier said than done, though. There are some things that you kind of have to bear in mind or nail before you land at that space, but it's all in all doable.
For sure, man. I love that point about confidence and like projecting confidence, right? And even though like all three of us here have some experience in photography, there's moments where something will be a little bit out of hand. Like maybe something weird happened on your camera, you were like worried for a second about your memory card getting corrupted, or like a cloud came over your light and you're oh crap. And then that energy, despite how good of a job you may be doing, that energy could be infectious, right? And it always is, whether it's good or bad energy. So yeah, definitely having that confidence, putting in that like good face, even though behind it you might be a little bit worried about a couple of things. We're all perfectionists here as well as photographers. You get worried about some small things, but yeah, kind of getting through that. And then I think other things that like feed into that, you know, how do you get up that confidence? Maybe that's another point. Like, how do you start to develop that? Is it just experience? Is it something else?
Experience. You know, you just got to go out and do the work. That's like the best and number one way to kind of just build that up. Talk to people. It's like, you know, if you're not good with being around people, put yourself around people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's gonna help you. Sometimes, you know, like when birds are born, you know, sometimes they get kicked out of the nest.
Yeah,
you know, like at a certain point during your growth, you know, and that concept is very cruel, but it's necessary. It's a necessary evil. You got to just do it. There's no, you know, way around it. You know, like there are things that you can do separate and apart from that can guarantee you, or not guarantee, but you know, it's like a avenue, gradual growth. You know, you can probably like, you know, probably buy a course or talk to a friend or whatever. But the best way is to just do it, man. Like you just gotta. I'm bad with people, you know, like I wouldn't really classify myself as an introvert, but you know, like I don't really talk much, and because I don't talk much, sometimes I find that it's a little bit better for me to not be around people sometimes. I had to break myself.
People don't realize that you're a genius until they like really start digging in.
Yeah, I mean, you know, so, you know, you just got to put yourself, you know, within the realm of people. And now it's to the point where, you know, I really don't mind, you know, truth be told, I'd rather be, you know, sometimes I'd rather be by myself working alone. But if I'm ever in a situation where I need to be around people, you know, it's not like, it's not overbearing anymore, you know, so I mean, you just got to do it, man.
Yeah, I think, so I really like the point that we're focusing on here, because ultimately, like what we're saying is like it starts with you, right? Like the comfort zone of the model is always ultimately going to be determined by your comfort level, and that seems to be what we're focusing in here. And I agree with that completely. And Cash, like really good point. Like, you know, if you're uncomfortable with a specific scenario, try to like dive into that. You know, like be around people, shoot with more models. You know, the repetition of it, that helps for sure.
Sorry to cut you. It's not always gonna like determine the comfort level of the model, but in most cases, the reason why I mentioned that as a primary drive is because energy is really contagious. You know, so you might have a model that doesn't know what you're doing, and you might have a model that knows exactly what she's doing, and she probably knows what she wants to give to you. But to complement that vibe, you know, you gotta also bring something to the table too. You know, but if you have a setup where, you know, both of you guys are kind of in a particular mood, it's a recipe for disaster. Versus if you have a setup where the model knows what she's doing and you're like a Debbie Downer, it might offset her mood that she's bringing to the table. So what ends up happening is what you're bringing, you know, is automatically, you know, what she brings, you know, that the vibe that you have, what she brings automatically converted to that, or she doesn't get to output the best version of what she has to offer to you because, you know, the energy that you're bringing, the lack of confidence and stuff like that.
Yeah, like exactly. You know, it's like you controlling the vibe is like such a big part of, I think, being a collaborative photographer in that sense, whether it's behind the camera or in front of the camera, that ability to understand and use it. Because like, you know, for one, feeling comfortable, like, hey, like just starting the conversation early before the shoot starts and just, you know, again, creating that vibe, but also just creating that chemistry and relationship, understanding how that person likes to communicate and talk. And that goes into how you communicate later on when you're shooting and stuff like that. And I think, you know, especially, you know, we talk about experienced models, especially if it's an underexperienced model, right? You know, their comfort level is going to be a little low as well. And so the more you make them feel comfortable through conversation and just really make it seem like, you know, before you even fire a shot, you're kind of acquainted, you're friends. That goes into it. And I think in general, just, you know, if you're enjoying the process, you're gonna probably get the best photos. And when it's a two-way street, I think it can really help.
Yep, you're right.
Yeah, and in addition to having the skills, having the confidence, managing the vibe, understanding the type of person that you're working with, and how to work with them, I'm glad that you guys brought all that stuff up, because as I was planning for this episode here, those were all some things that I was thinking about. Another angle that I was thinking about, though, and like coming from my own experience when you're shooting with models, and you're getting outside of your house, outside of your studio, outside of these controlled conditions that you're used to working in. One thing that I've definitely experienced is like, you get there and then you have all these ideas, and then you don't necessarily have with you the gear or whatever to execute it. So that's definitely another point of view to take this from. Do you have anything to speak to on that, Cash?
From the standpoint of like just being in a situation where you lack something.
Yeah, lacking gear, or how you get your gear in order for these types of shoots with models. Yeah.
So I'm not gonna say gear doesn't matter. I know like there's this thing where people kind of like say, gear doesn't matter. There's like this whole notion going around of gear doesn't matter. I'm not gonna be the person to sit here and say it doesn't matter, but my view on gear is that gear makes our lives easier. Yeah. It makes our lives so much easier than what it needs to be. And the thing with gear too is that like with what it provides, there's always a solution or alternative to that. For example, you might not have a tripod for a shoot, but a tripod isn't the only way you can get a stabilized shot. So it all depends on how you choose to apply yourself to fix a certain situation that you might have in your hands. Gear is effectively just like problem solving. Maybe in a situation where you need more dynamic range in the sense of for whatever reason, right? But you can get equal, if not way better dynamic range by bracketing your shots. Maybe you need to set up where you take multiple exposures of the same photo in order to get the best dynamic range. What I find is that people, a lot of the times, they don't think about that. They just think about the things that they lack. It's easy to focus on the things that you don't have, because we live in such a world where it's visual, and there's all this stuff pushed in front of you through marketing, and it feeds on your insecurity. And while that might be a natural thing, when it comes on to just being practical, it's not exactly a mindset you want to have. There are many shoots that I took up that I shouldn't have took up because I didn't have the gear. But, again, gear, it's like problem solving. My job was very much harder because I didn't have the gear. But I always think that there's more than likely a resolution to what you're probably looking for. I would say you can check to see if there's something you can do without having that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of picturing like scales or like a teeter-totter in my head, where you have like the gear and creativity. Kind of, you can buy more gear or have more creativity. Teeter-totter, does that make sense to you? Is that a thing that you know what I'm talking about?
Never heard of that. What is teeter-totter?
Like a kid sits on it, like it's like kind of like scales.
Oh yeah,
one
like
kid
a
sits on the other side.
yeah,
Do you guys call it
yeah,
something different?
We call it a seesaw.
Oh, seesaw.
Well, yeah. We call it seesaws too. We call it seesaw.
Do you call it a seesaw?
Well, I haven't used the word seesaw in a long time, but I think I've said it in my life.
Really?
At some
and
point.
Never teeter-totter?
Yeah. I've probably said teeter-totter as well.
A couple of times, but you don't like to talk about it in public.
Yeah, I know. Well, let's think about it, really, Yeah, I think such a large factor here is like kind of the equipment point, is like it's just positivity, right? Like this feeds the equipment, this feeds what we were talking before about the attitude you bring on set. Like things are gonna go wrong, right? Like even if you have the right equipment, sometimes you forget it. Sometimes the location, something's off with the location. Like you mentioned earlier, Cash, sometimes it's a wardrobe thing, you're not vibing with it, maybe it's not what you pictured. It ultimately, if you can adapt on set and just commit to being a creative, adaptive, positive person, because when it's easy for something to go wrong and then for you to be worried by that, and then again, as we referred to earlier, that can come off, right? And it can create like an unsettling feeling for everybody. And so I think anytime you can just prioritize problem solving and just what can I do to make this work, rather than like crap this happened, it's always going to help. I was curious to know, like, maybe from you guys, if you've had, because I think it's important to express how to express the importance of positivity and creativity. And was there an instance that you guys had gone through in the past where something didn't go right, whether it was wardrobe, location, equipment forgotten, or whatever? How did you handle that?
Cash, you can take that first.
Yeah, I give an example of that. I shot a wedding recently, and I had a battery die on me on the GH5. I was like doing hybrid coverage, which is very hard. And I was shooting photos on my camera, and the resolution that I'm recording on one camera is kind of essential to my workflow. But what I had to do is I had to use that photo camera, switch it over to 1080p video when I can, and just grab a few frames here and there when I can. And then when I did get the time, I just switched my battery out or charged my battery for the GH5. A lot of people would panic in that situation.
Yeah.
Because the camera that I video with just died.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like my first thought to use the camera that I'm using to take photos to the video and grab a couple stills. But I was like, why don't I do this? I already have this, and it turns out that it ended up working out a lot easier, because then what you can do, I mean, I'm not saying that this is like a replacement to this, but like what I did is just made sure that I had like a very good bit rate on the 1080 video that I'm shooting. So like if I'm doing post-production work, if I want to upscale it, I can. Not gonna be the same result as the 4K clip, but it's something, So I mean, I would say gear does matter. I'm not saying it doesn't matter. It does matter, but it's just problem solving. The same way how editing is problem solving. Editing really and truly, that's just really all that it is. Same thing with gear. And if you're just not in the space to solve certain problems, aka you don't have the right tools for the job, maybe you can't do it. There are some jobs that you might come across or get where you need specific gear for it. Not saying it doesn't matter in that case, but chances are, I would say a high percentage of the time, more than less, you can substitute something in order to have something work for you. But all in all, my V1 gear is that gear just makes our lives very easier. You don't 100% of the time need new equipment, and that's kind of just like this lie that we tell ourselves sometimes to just avoid doing something.
Yeah, man. I love that particular example too, Cash. And like, I think that's what Michael was really going for here as well, as like an example that illustrates exactly what we're talking about really well. Like, because you've been in so many shoots, because you're so comfortable, you were just able to come up with like quickly a solution, right? That made like logical sense in your head right away. You're like, okay, this is the situation. It is what it is. This battery is dead. So rather than like obsessing about the fact that battery's dead and I'm going to get all sweaty and start panicking, I'm just going to say, what's the next best thing, right? Yeah. Like literally, logically speaking, okay, I've got the 1080, I increase the bit rate, I'm still going to be able to put this into my workflow the way that I want. It's coming from the experience of like shooting so much, and also just like the coolness that that's given you, right? Where you're able to just to do that. I actually have another example from my personal shooting when I was starting out, I guess a couple of years ago. I had been more familiar with video work, but getting into a little bit more photography stuff. And I do a lot of work in real estate, so I got hired by a real estate agent to do some headshots for her. So she was able to get a condo to shoot in from one of her one of her clients and show up to do the shoot. I've got my camera, I've got my tripod, I'm ready to go. And then she wanted one particular shot. The condo itself had like a really nice view of the city, and she wanted like herself standing in front of the window with the city behind her. Like, beautiful summer day. What problem do you guys think I had?
Overexposed.
Yeah, and like exposed from behind where you couldn't really like make her out in that photo, right? So I wasn't able to get that particular shot that she had in mind, but we got a lot of amazing shots that day. Basically, I was able to kind of, instead of just saying like, you know, had I had a ridiculously huge, powerful flash or a bunch of lights, I could have got it. Didn't bring that stuff. It's not what we had really planned for, but I was able to make some nice photos out of the situation, utilizing all of that natural sunlight coming through the windows, making some good backgrounds, and still making something that made her happy at the end of the day. And she did have some good photos. But yeah, just another example where didn't quite have the gear. Maybe it's a learning experience of, you know, what I want to bring next time so that I can be a little bit more creative and also like talk to the client more, communicate with the client more in advance. But we were just talking about things that people did well, so I thought I'd be the one who comes in and says like, you know, come my confession moment and say, you know, what I could have done better. But how that affects me now is now I'm always thinking like, okay, if I do, I don't want to end up in a situation like that again, so let me plan it out more, talk to the client more, communicate more, prep more, bring more gear to be more flexible. So just another example for you guys.
I love that. Yeah. And like, those are two great examples because they're like both client work, right? Like one is under the gun real estate, one is like a wedding. So the pressure is like really on. You know, I loved your example, Cash, because it was very like, you know, in the moment I had to come up with a solution. It also reinforces your equipment point because it's like, yeah, well, because you had an additional camera, that's literally a moment where equipment is like you said, it just added value. And then for Jared, like, you know, it's like there are things that you take away from it. Sometimes you don't find the solution, right? Sometimes you try or whatever and it just goes wrong. But what are you going to do after? Are you going to linger in it and like beat yourself up about it? Maybe a little bit, maybe, you know, ram your head into a wall and be like, but yeah,
it's a pretty bad thing to happen, man. Especially like in the environment of a wedding, you know. And the funny thing is, you know, when the bride was at the altar, you know, she saw that I wasn't like on my video camera, and you know, I could just read her face and know that she was like probably worrying a bit because it's one of those brides where she kind of like overanalyzes everything. When she walks off, funny enough, when she walks off, she looks at me. She's like, "Yo, what happened to your camera?" And I'm like, "Oh, don't worry, I got everything." And immediately, like, there's just that one statement diffuses like just any form of anxiety that she probably would have. And I know this because, you know, like the countenance on her face kind of like just changed up, and she seemed a little bit more relaxed. So yeah, it just depends on how you choose to handle the situation, man.
Yeah, man.
And I'm not saying like that's an ideal situation to be in. Yeah, it might take a quality hit, but from a standpoint of just functioning, it works.
We're going to have to get into the news here pretty soon, boys. And I think that might be the perfect segue right there. But this was an amazing delving into of the topic here. I definitely got a lot out of this conversation, something that I've been thinking about a lot. And I don't always have people to talk to about it. As a photographer, sometimes life is a little bit lonely. So well, we might dig into that on a future episode. But having you boys here to talk shop and share stories and grow together really warms my heart. And another thing that warms my heart is talking about segues here: space. So, and you know what else? News. And this is some news about space. Sydney, roll that news intro.
Oh man. Okay, so it's the news story is tied back to space, obviously, like Jared mentioned, and but it goes into something else that's a bit more topical, and hopefully that's not a cheat, but we are leaning on news as the reference. So obviously everyone knows like NASA got a new rover on Mars, and it's doing a whole bunch of things, but it's been interesting to see some of the images that have come back to understand like kind of some of the things that it's doing. It's a multi-purpose tool for sure. But the thing that I find really, really interesting about it, and we can dive more into some of the stuff that's going on that mission, but the thing that really stands out for me is just like how inspirational and like motivational things that aren't even technically art forms can be, right? Like so space is just like this massive gorgeous thing. Like you look at a picture of a planet or of gas clouds in a galaxy or whatever, and it's not like technically art, but in a way it kind of is, and it's like it can be inspirational and moving. For folks that don't know about the rover, just to tie in some statistics around that mission before we transcend into maybe a bit more of a topical discussion around space and inspiration and stuff. It's called the Perseverance. You may have heard this week it landed on Mars. We have some really cool photos of it landing and stuff. It's doing a few things. So for starters, its main, and I'm just going to read this clean off so I don't butcher this. The main intention is that it's looking for signs of ancient life, right? It's collecting samples of rock and possibly returning it to Earth so we can study it and see, was there water? Was there life that was pre-existing here on this planet? You also have an element of it called MOXIE, which is literally just like it's an oxygen tank. They wrote it down here as like, it's kind of like a tree. There's a lot of carbon dioxide on Mars, not a whole lot of oxygen. So like it's going through the process of kind of exchanging carbon dioxide and turning it into oxygen. And that's going to help us later on because we can use that to kind of like get ourselves off of Mars, to breathe on Mars. So there's a lot of benefit to that. The last thing is that there's also like a little drone that's kind of on it. So photographers, we love drones. That's cool. There's a little drone that's going to, I think in a few days, that is not potentially factual, but very soon we'll be kind of going, soon. It'll be the first little guy to kind of propel and go through on another planet. So really cool stuff there. Also, there are 23 cameras on this thing, just as a heads up. That's a lot of cameras, man. But I don't know, when I hear these things, when I read about these things, and they're not things we talk about every day. They're not things that we see every day, especially even when referring to just looking at stars. Like when we're in the city, we don't see it. But when we see images of just gorgeous, again, gas clouds or sometimes we look up and we just see the clearest moon, and it's really cool. It's like, it's another experience. And I really wanted to have a conversation around, has space ever inspired you? Like, is there just like a moment, whether it was a movie, it could even be, fictional that way. It could be, again, like a moment where you went somewhere and you saw the most beautiful sunrise, or you saw the craziest, sharpest blood moon or whatever. Like, is there a movie or a moment in time in relation to space? Because I think it is important to have multiple sources of inspiration and to highlight that. Are there any moments that you've had with a movie or real life moment that have inspired you?
So let's get into that in just 1 second, but I do want to give a couple more details just because this is the Photography Brothers. I really want to focus on the cameras on this bad boy. You said it has 23 cameras. The initial pictures were from the hazard detection cameras, which are low resolution photos. 320 by 240. That is from the Haz cams on the front and the back of the Rover. Those were the first pictures that we received. It actually takes a short amount of time to send those low resolution photos about half an hour. We started to get high resolution photos a couple of hours later, and one of the cameras, some of the photos will actually show them here. Some of these were captured on the best camera on the Rover, which captures 20 megapixels. So pretty interesting stuff. I believe that's it's 10 times better than the previous Curiosity rover. Same amount of megapixels as the GH5, right, Cash?
And the R6.
Yeah, nice. So Cash has just about as good of cameras as NASA, which is interesting.
Also, the other thing to add in there is that, you know, the mission control room, it shows everyone celebrating like, yay, it worked, it didn't blow up.
Yeah.
They used an Insta360 Pro
interesting.
2 in the room. Yeah.
Oh, interesting, man. Shout out to them. Shout out to Insta360. But yeah, have I ever been inspired by space? Obviously, I have a business that's literally called Galaxy. That's been a huge inspiration. I don't know if you guys have ever noticed listening to this podcast, but I'm a nerd. I do like Star Wars.
No.
I've got a Yoda right up there, chilling. Big fan of space, big fan of Star Wars. It's incredibly inspiring to me. Probably one of the first instances of getting really inspired by space was like Stanley Kubrick's movie 2001 A Space Odyssey. But yeah, I also like grew up in Timmins, and I could see like Aurora Borealis and all that type of stuff. So yeah, it's all definitely interesting, all fascinating to me. What about you, Cash?
I'm fascinated by eclipses. I'm always fascinated by space too. Space is it always sends me into like deep, scary thoughts. There's like the different planets out there that I'm really fascinated by. I learned recently that there's like a planet out there that has like Earth-like conditions. I forgot the name of it, but there's also another planet that has just made up of pretty much just the minerals that diamonds are from. So it's like a large diamond out there. Yeah, man, and kind of like learned if it was anywhere within pretty much like mining range or like Earth, you know, diamonds would pretty much lose its value, you know, because if that's like mined, then it kind of would like just inflate everything that diamonds represent and stand for now. So I mean,
they're gonna find
like
something
crazy,
else, man.
there are crazy resources out there, man.
Oh, yeah,
like there are
man.
even resources out there that we don't even know about, you know.
I'm pretty sure it rains diamonds on Jupiter. Like, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, there's resources out there that can give us access to technology that we didn't even know was possible.
Jupiter is like it's like Puff Daddy's house in that respect.
Yeah.
Space is like one big barren wasteland, and you know, everything is just ever expanding. Space is always expanding, by the way. There's pretty much no limit to the universe, you know. It's always expanding, endless resources out there. It's just mind-blowing, you know.
Yeah, I think it's like vastness of it, the you know, some of the visuals, like there are things just about space that can represent like different emotional states and ways of thinking. And so I think it's just like such a cool thing, you know, like even just looking at the moon is such an interesting thing. It's like this image that we put on the walls of our atmosphere every night, and we just look at it and go like, oh yeah, we're floating in a emptiness, vast emptiness. It's interesting. Like it's a constant reminder, and it just understanding different worlds, and like, you know, for me as a quickie, like, you know, watching Interstellar was like crazy for me. Understanding the ideas of like a black hole and how it can like warp space-time and like what that really means, you know. It's like crazy. And these things, like, you know, they sometimes you can get really artistic and create them visually, but like even just as it's just something that's really cool. And it's like almost like, you know, God or science or whatever you believe in got really creative and made this massive canvas for us to look at and be like, oh yeah, like this is sick.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
is truly inspiring, and I mean like inspiring in that way that it like motivates you. It shows you a greater thing, right? Like even
Yeah.
to tie it back to photography, right? Like we can look at this. You're right, it is science, but you can look at this as like an artistic achievement as well. And like part of this is the tech, and part of it is the art of how they're capturing these photos. The reason why
Yeah.
they have, what do you say, 23 cameras on this thing
Mhm.
is to really give you the sense that like you're there, right? Like you can see it coming down. There's literally a video where you can like, it feels like you're parachuting down onto the surface of Mars as you follow this rover. You can like sit there and look around and imagine yourself standing there, and kind of like increasing the reach of human capabilities and things like that. So yeah, it's definitely really cool, and a lot of that is to do with photography, right? Like on the tech side and the artistic side, having these high resolution images, right? Why did they put such an expensive camera? It can shoot 20 megapixels and send it back to Earth. It's obviously not cheap, right? To pull that off and to do that. And the reason why they want to do it is to, I guess, it's to inspire people, really, right? So
Mhm.
inspire them into spending more money, because these things cost like $3 billion each. But
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess another question I'd have for you guys is, when talking to, how other things can inspire us, what other art forms, whether it's music or literal like visual art or films or whatever, like what art forms do you kind of lean on, like before, to get yourself amped up to go and shoot photos? Do you consume anything, or do you just look at images, or what do you guys do?
Yeah, for me, I'm always listening to music when I edit. Music really influences how I edit, the type of music I
Hmm.
listen to as well. Um, I
Hmm.
would say probably about like 80 to 90% of the work that I have on my page, it's like influenced by some song.
Wow.
Or it's sometimes I just like play some music to kind of just vibe out while I'm editing. Um,
Yeah.
I love Russian artists, not just Russian photographers, but the work that they like put out is just mind blowing, man. Like those guys are on some next level stuff. So I always look to them for inspiration. I also love them because they create with what they have.
Yeah.
They don't have big fancy setups, like most of the work that I see these guys put out, it's on like either a body that's like 5 or 10 years old, or a lens that has fungus growing in it, because of the characteristics and stuff like that. Um, Majority of them as well, they use like the Helios lens. So just work with what they have, and they kind of just value character, and just
Hmm.
it is their work's like it's just really nice and organic, and they all their work is kind of like, it seems very consistent, because it's almost as if majority of them are of the same mindset. So I really appreciate
Hmm.
their work. I always look to them for inspiration. I try to tie it back into like what I do. um, Even with some of the most recent stuff that I shot, kind of like incorporate a little bit of that style, with just how I work and what they produce. So super stoked to put those out and have you guys see. But all in all, I just really love their work, and I really find myself getting intrigued with like just breaking down like how they get like certain results to come about. So I always try to like look at their work and try to emulate it in post production. But yeah, post production also inspires me as well.
Kash is going to send us a couple of his favorite Russian photographer accounts on Instagram, and we're going to link those down below so
Oh
that
yeah.
you guys can check them out. Yeah, me personally, there's a lot of different sources of inspiration. There's a lot of places where I draw creativity and where I draw ideas and try to bring it all together. We talk here all the time about like the interdisciplinary nature of things. I had to like really think how to say that word. When you get better at photography, you get better at music. there's all of it's kind of ways of expressing yourself and ways of like instilling meaning into something and showing your point of view on the world and presenting that to other people. But yeah, you guys know your brother Jared. I play guitar, I love music, I listen to lots of hip hop. That inspires me. I love watching movies, huge movie buff.
Yeah,
just tons of places where I draw my artistic inspiration, but also, you know, my drive in a lot of things, like whether that's mindset, you know, whether that's business, whatever it is. Yeah, you can't just get stuck in, you know, only looking at photos and only thinking about the lives of great photographers. Like, I think you're going to be setting yourself apart from a lot of other great artistic achievements. So, including space, you know, you got to bring space in there as well.
Oh,
yeah, man. You know what? You actually brought up a really interesting point here, and maybe I don't know if it's the last point or what, but it's it also creating in different art forms is such an interesting thing, right? Because you learn so much about yourself and self-reflection when you conjure up a crazy photo concept or video project, or you write a song and you just kind of like vocalize how you're feeling in the moment. There's such a self-reflection part to art. And so being able to expand and explore different mediums sometimes can almost like grant you this advantage of like having different ways to learn from yourself. And to have like, maybe it's just new ideas, maybe it's just having a better understanding of how you want to create. But I really love that point, Jared, because like, yeah, like sometimes it's not just listening or viewing. Sometimes it's just creating in different art forms too, that can give you differing perspectives.
Yep.
Certainly. That's sounds like a good last point, man. What are we at? Yeah, we're pretty close. We're like an hour. I think that's the show, guys. I think that's the show.
Cash, thanks for coming, man.
Anytime, man.
It's good meeting you, dude.
Good meeting you too, bro.
We couldn't have wished for a better first guest, man.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. Thanks, guys.
Couldn't have wished for a better one. We loved your personal stories, man. Love the openness, love the honesty. Love your take on this whole space story here as well. And yeah, man, I'm definitely feeling motivated right now. I'm definitely feeling inspired right now. I'm gonna get out of here, take some photos, you know, maybe meditate a bit and really reflect on everything that we've talked about here today. And I hope that our viewers, our listeners, and everybody out there got a lot out of this. Before we go, we just want to remind you guys to subscribe to the Galaxy channel where you're watching this here video. We're making 2 videos a week if you include PHOTOBROS, so we've got lots of content for you guys. And if you want to get in touch on Instagram, we now have an Instagram. Michael's been putting some clips up there, some different things. I don't know, he's on TikTok these days, he's doing all this crazy stuff. But what's the tag there, buddy, for people to find us on the gram?
Oh man,
PHOTOBROS.
It'll be linked down below in the description.
Photo.bros.podcast. I really was relying on you to have that down. Since you
could just tell them to go to the description down below. You don't gotta make me like say what it actually is.
Gotta put you on the spot. gotta put you on the spot, you know. So in here on PHOTOBROS, we're here. We're publicly embarrassing Michael. We're calling him out. Hopefully Kashif does a better job of this. Kashif, where can people find you on Instagram?
Yeah, so Kashif.Robinson or Kashif.Robinson on Instagram.
You see, Michael, so that's how it's done.
KSHIF.
You didn't ask for my personal profile. You asked for the account I made like last week. So what do you you know what I mean?
We're here on PHOTOBROS. We're busting balls. Go follow Kashif and maybe follow PHOTOBROS as well. And if you want to listen to the episode any of our back catalog, any of that, we're everywhere, man. We're here on YouTube, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify. We're gonna keep bringing the great topics. We're gonna keep bringing the great news stories. I'm feeling like the Photography Brothers are at about like 100th of our total strength and total power, and now we've had Kashif on here. We're gonna get some other photographers on, and we're just gonna be taking over. So get ready for all of that. All right, we're gonna give Kashif the last word here before we go.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys having me on here. It's a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Pleasure's ours, man.